In 2019, something unusual happened. The President of the United States publicly suggested buying Greenland. The reaction was instant. Media outlets laughed. Commentators mocked the idea. Most people assumed it was a joke. But history teaches a simple rule. Great powers do not joke about territory. They test reactions. They signal intent. They prepare the ground long before action is taken. Greenland may look irrelevant at first glance. Vast island of ice, remote, sparsely populated, and seemingly disconnected from global affairs. But what appears empty often hides strategic value. Greenland sits between North America and Europe, positioned at the gateway to the Arctic. As global temperatures rise, Arctic ice is retreating, and new shipping routes are opening. Routes that can cut weeks off global trade. Routes that bypass traditional choke points like the Suez Canal. Routes that reshape global logistics. For centuries, global power was decided by the Atlantic Ocean. Later, the Pacific became dominant. Now, attention is shifting north. The Arctic is becoming the next global ocean, and Greenland controls access to it. The island sits above critical submarine routes. It lies beneath major missile flight paths between nuclear powers. It anchors early warning radar systems that detect incoming threats. This makes Greenland central to modern military strategy, which leads to an uncomfortable truth. The United States is already in Greenland. Since World War II, the U.S. has operated military bases on the island. These bases are not symbolic or ceremonial. They are essential to American nuclear defense. Without Greenland, the United States would lose precious minutes of reaction time against potential missile attacks. That is not a risk Washington is willing to take. Officially, Greenland belongs to Denmark. But Denmark cannot realistically defend Greenland. Its military is small, and its resources are limited. The sheer size and isolation of Greenland make meaningful defense impossible for a country of Denmark's scale. At the same time, Greenland itself wants independence. For decades, Greenlandic leaders have discussed breaking away from Danish control. The desire for political and cultural autonomy is real, but independence has a price. More than half of Greenland's public budget comes from Danish subsidies. Without that financial support, the government would struggle to maintain basic infrastructure and services. True independence requires money. It requires security. It requires investment. Greenland cannot provide these things on its own, which means independence requires a powerful partner. Only one country has the economic strength, military reach, and strategic interest to replace Denmark, the United States. Beneath Greenland's ice lie vast, untapped resources. Rare earth elements, uranium, iron ore. These materials are essential for modern economies and modern warfare. They power electric vehicles, advanced weapon systems, and artificial intelligence infrastructure. Right now, China dominates global rare earth supply chains, and China has already tried to enter Greenland. Through infrastructure projects, through mining investments, through long-term development proposals. Each time, those efforts were quietly blocked, because Greenland cannot be allowed to fall into Chinese hands. As Arctic ice continues to melt, Greenland becomes more valuable every year. What was once inaccessible is becoming reachable. What was once ignored is becoming contested. Time is no longer neutral. Every year raises the stakes. Every year increases strategic pressure. Greenland is no longer a peripheral territory. It is becoming central to global power calculations. And this is only the beginning. So why does 2027 matter? Arctic ice loss is accelerating faster than earlier projections. Shipping routes that were once theoretical are becoming commercially viable. What used to be seasonal is becoming permanent. At the same time, global power competition is intensifying. The United States and China are no longer competing economically alone. They are competing over supply chains, minerals, logistics corridors, and military positioning. Rare earth elements are at the center of that struggle. Without them, advanced weapons, clean energy systems, and next-generation technology simply cannot function. The United States cannot rely on China for these materials, and it cannot afford disruption during a major geopolitical conflict. Greenland offers an alternative, but securing that alternative takes time. This is where 2027 becomes a realistic endpoint rather than a prediction pulled from thin air. By that time, several processes are expected to mature simultaneously. Greenland's push for independence will reach a critical stage. Danish political patience will thin. American Arctic strategy will require hard commitments rather than symbolic presence. And global tensions will likely demand clarity rather than ambiguity. But ownership does not mean annexation. There will be no announcement that the United States has taken Greenland. No vote in Congress declaring new territory. No dramatic moment for the history books. Instead, ownership will emerge quietly through systems. American military infrastructure will grow. Bases will become permanent, not rotational. U.S. companies will finance ports, airports, and communication networks. Mining rights will be granted through long-term contracts. Energy projects will be backed by American capital. Currency exposure will shift. Dollar-denominated financing will replace Danish subsidies. Greenland's economic survival will become tied to U.S. stability. Politically, Greenland will appear independent. In reality, it will sit firmly within the American sphere of influence. It is how influence has worked for decades. Formal sovereignty remains intact, while practical control shifts beneath the surface. And this approach minimizes resistance. Denmark avoids humiliation. Greenland gains nominal independence. The United States secures strategic dominance. China will protest, but it will have little leverage. Its investments will be blocked on security grounds. Its access will be denied quietly, not publicly. Russia will object rhetorically, but it lacks the economic tools to compete. Its influence in Greenland is minimal, and its focus remains elsewhere. The European Union will issue statements, but without military reach or unified Arctic policy, it cannot intervene meaningfully. In the end, no major power is willing to challenge the United States directly over Greenland. The cost is too high, the payoff is uncertain, and the terrain favors American logistics. This is why resistance will be muted. Greenland itself will face a choice: remain dependent on Denmark with limited autonomy and declining relevance, or accept American partnership, investment, and protection in exchange for alignment. History shows how these choices usually resolve. Survival outweighs symbolism. Economic security outweighs abstract sovereignty, especially for small populations in harsh environments. This is not coercion in the traditional sense. It is structural inevitability. The United States does not need to force Greenland into anything. It only needs to remain the only viable option. And that is exactly what it is doing. By 2027, the transformation will not look dramatic. There will be no single moment to point to. No headline declaring a transfer of ownership, but the indicators will be clear. American bases will be permanent. American companies will dominate extraction. American security guarantees will be essential. Greenland's future decisions will be constrained by American interests. That is ownership in the modern era. Not flags, not declarations, it's dependency. This is how empires operate today, and Greenland is a system waiting to be absorbed. When people remember the joke about buying Greenland, they will misunderstand what happened. The purchase was never the plan. Control was, and control does not require a transaction. It requires patience, leverage, and timing. By 2027, all three align. Greenland may still fly its own flag. It may still hold its own elections. It may still speak of independence. But beneath the surface, the foundations will tell a different story. Military integration, economic reliance, strategic alignment, ownership without ownership. This is not speculation. It is pattern recognition. It's the same logic that shaped previous spheres of influence is repeating. just adapted to a quieter age. The Arctic is no longer the edge of the world. It is becoming its center, and Greenland sits at the heart of it. The United States will not walk away from that advantage. It never has.